Are you thinking about gentling your own wild Mustang? Here are some tips. We're going to go over 4 tips for gentling wild Mustangs, and then how you can get some mold out of hay with a chainsaw. All right. Tip number 1, remember that they are wild, so you're going to want to tame them before you train them. They're not used to being around people, so at first they're going to be very nervous about everything. Work on getting them comfortable around you before you take on any training tasks. Tip number 2 is to really work on learning to read their body language.
Especially being so young.
You really want to be able to communicate with them, low stress, and that's going to involve learning body language. That's something that really takes time to learn, but it's very key for gentling a wild Mustang. Some of the things you'd watch for with reading their body language is if they're leaning away from you towards you, they'll shift their weight a little bit. A shifting of the weight will mean something. Now these guys here, this is Dr. Frankenstein. We brought them home in June, and they have been just a blast to work with. These guys are all different. Stein is very nervous, very reactive, where Frank is just whatever. He's okay with everything that we do. All right, now Frank is going to meet somebody new for the first time. So far, he's only met Dan and I. Now Paul's out here in his pajamas, because that's how we roll around here. He just came down to say goodnight. When you first get home with your new Mustang, it could be tempting for everybody that you know to come over to see them, because everybody's going to be so excited and you're going to want to show them off. But they're going to be nervous around new people. So if you are bringing anybody around, don't expect everybody else to be able to pet them or touch them, even if you are already. It takes a long time to gain their trust, and it's even more trust for them to trust somebody besides whoever they've been working with. You can see how Paul there, he's doing a good job of keeping his eyes down low, not looking at Frank, and hoping that he gets curious enough to come and take a little bite of hay from his hand. It's best to keep the training with one, or for Dan and I, it's, the two of us to begin with. And introducing new people, you see Paul doesn't even try to touch him. He hasn't been home very long. Frank hasn't, so this is just a big deal, just taking hay from his hand. I was just noticing how Frank here has black tips on his ears. I just thought, wow, that's really cool. Now he's coming towards me. What cool ears you have. Keep watching so you can see how we use chainsaw to get some mold out of hay. Tip number 3 is to make sure you're providing for their needs. You're going to want to make sure they always have clean water, plenty of hay, shelter to get out of the weather. All of that stuff is real important to help them be comfortable. And even if they won't use the shelter, it's good to make sure you have it just in case. I have giggled sometimes how they will stand out in the weather even though there's a perfectly good shelter. So here we're getting our hay put up for the year, and you see that black spot in there. We want to get access to that before it's super cold out. So we're getting that brought forward, and then we're going to get that mold out of there and just check to see how good the bale is, or if there's a lot of waste in it or not. Sure, it feels good to have the hay put up for the year. These square bales, they're nice for transporting and not having so many bales to stack, but they are a little bit more complicated for other reasons. Have you used these big square bales? How do you like them? Now, mold is very bad for horses. You don't want them to have any of it. When I first got into having horses, we had a friend who had cattle, and we were buying hay from him. And he said, oh, this bale is going to be just fine. I didn't realize how not fine it was. I ended up by feeding it to our horses, and one of my horses still has a cough to this day. If there's any dust or mold, even if you didn't see it, if there's any of that in there, then he will start coughing. So when we have any bales that have mold on it, we make sure we get that stuff all out of there. And if it's bad, then you just throw away the whole bale. But these bales are big, so sometimes you're able to just to pull anything out that's bad. And that's what we're up to here. And because there's that big black spot, we wanted to get it out, see how deep it went. So we've been just cutting it out of there. And our horse tells us if we were wrong. If someone tells you mold is okay in the hay, do not believe them, even if they're your friend. What Stein does to Frankenstein. There's Frank, and there's Stein. Totally slobbered up from playing. Now remember all of that hay we put in the barn? That hay is gone now, and we have access to the barn for training, which is absolutely wonderful because in the wintertime, it's cold and windy in Montana. This winter we had all the way down to, I think it was 45 below zero. That's cold. Now, tip number 4 for gentling a wild Mustang is to let them come to you and approach them gradually. Remember, they're wild. We want to make sure that we're not approaching them so fast that they feel the need to defend themselves. So by letting them come up to us and us approaching them gradually, we're going to help to create a strong bond that will be absolutely amazing when you get it. But be patient. Patience is key when you're gentling a wild Mustang or a wild donkey. Have fun with it. The rewards are amazing. It is so fun. These guys now, even though this is their first time in the barn, you can just see how chill they are around. And in the pens behind them are new wild animals that we brought home. So wild donkeys are in those pens that we're working on gentling. But Frankenstein here came home much sooner, months beforehand. And the ones in the pens behind there, the oldest one is 22 years old. We also have a 17-year-old. And those guys really take a lot of patience because they're so nervous. We want to create curiosity with them. And that curiosity is going to allow us to gentle them. And then we can move on to training after we've done that. I hope you enjoyed these 4 tips. So that's tame them before you train them. Learn to communicate with them and read their body language. Provide for their needs. And let them come to you. That way you can create curiosity and later on have just an awesome bond. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this video. And I sure love it if you hit that like and subscribe button. And I'd love to hear your comments. Have you ever used a chainsaw to cut apart hay? That was our first time for sure. All right, you guys have an awesome day, and thanks again for watching.